The heroes stood frozen in the eerie green light of the machine. The saucer-like monster hovered in the glade. But aside from the strange lights that pulsated from its dome head, the thing had simply hummed a low sound since appearing mysteriously outside the city.
Maybe it just wants to make friends,
said Big the cat. The gentle giant reached out a hand toward the saucer's body.
Be careful,
said Tails, hovering over the scene of the twin helicopter blades that gave him his name.
You don't know what...
It was too late. The moment Big touched the machine, an awful grinding noise emanated from within. The massive metal monster spun around and bore itself into the ground.
Submit or be destroyed,
cried a hollow, angry voice from within.
Well, I think that settles that.
Amy ran up from the edge of the glade and called to her team.
Big, Cream, let's give it a little flower power.
Without a word, Big opened up his large bamboo umbrella and twirled it over his head. Amy and Cream the rabbit jumped on top, holding each other's hands and whipping up a furious spinning speed.
1, 2, 3, go!
Amy called and then let go of Cream to shoot herself at the machine with full force. Her hammer swung around in midair for a mighty blow, and then, bang! Amy bounced straight off the whirling body of the saucer. She hit the dirt and rolled to safety, but the machine continued its awful dig, sinking its body firmly into the earth.
submit, submit, submit.
It called out in a droning tone that set the hero's hairs on end.
It looks like the top may be vulnerable.
Yelped Tails over the noise.
Try to crush its dome.
In a split second, a blue blaze flew over their heads, nearly blowing the heroes down with its force. The spinning ball of fury shot toward the machine's dome like a bullet, and struck it hard and true. The dome crumpled as the blue blur came into focus as Sonic the Hedgehog.
Were you waiting long? Just kidding, I know you weren't,
he said with a smirk, and crouched to balance. Underneath him, the half-sunken saucer shivered and steamed.
Submit, submit, submit.
With a wet, sickening sound, the metal body of the monster burst, shooting a torrent of sticky green slime all over Amy's team.
Whoa!
Said Tails as he zipped high in the air to miss the green goo.
Gross!
Called Amy.
I feel like I got sneezed on by a giant.
Said Cream, picking up her floating sidekick pal from where he was knocked to the ground.
Oh, I don't know.
Said Big, sitting calmly in the squishy green slime.
It actually feels kind of nice.
Laughed Sonic.
Sorry to say, but that's what happens when you're not the fastest thing alive.
Without the robotic saucer body, all that was left of the machine was a tall metal spire. In its middle sat a large green meteor rock that continued to pulsate with strange light, even as it dripped the disgusting discharge.
We'll have to contact a medical team to decontaminate you.
Tails said.
Standard procedure.
Have fun waiting to get hosed off,
said Sonic as he swung outside the slime radius with Tails' help.
I've got more action to find instead of getting stuck in place.
The next day, Sonic sped through town in search of some fun. Street after street, the scene was calm and quiet. No explosions or attacks or action of any kind. Except at Cream and Cheese's house? Out front, the kindly rabbit and her partner were making a racket of clangs from a mountain of sheet metal. Cream struck a large wrench against the warped pile again and again. Sparks flew each time she struck, some jumping into Cheese's eyes, but neither of them seemed to care.
Hey Cream,
said Sonic as he skidded into her driveway.
Working on an art project?
We are building the spear,
said the rabbit without stopping.
Right, the spear.
Sonic didn't know exactly what to say.
And you think a wrench is gonna shape that metal the way you want?
Cream stopped her motion mid-swing. She pulled her tool down slowly and stared at it for a long moment. The quiet made Sonic uncomfortable.
Perhaps you were right.
She said at last. The wrench dropped with a thud, and Cream reached up her hands to grab the metal firmly. With surprising strength and an agonizing squeak sound, the rabbit folded two pieces of strong metal together, as though they were paper.
Whoa! Wow! Have you been working out?
Said Sonic. The little chow creature that followed Cream everywhere floated up to Sonic's nose.
Ciao.
Cream explained to Sonic that this meant they had been strengthened and wanted Sonic to join them.
I've got somewhere else to be,
Sonic said as he sped away before he got too close. The strange encounter drove Sonic across the city to Amy's house. If anyone knew what was going on with those two, it would be their best friend. But when Sonic arrived, Amy didn't charge out to greet him.
Amy? Anyone home?
Sonic called into the curiously open door. When no one answered, he walked in, carefully, in case there was an ambush waiting. But what he found was almost too boring. Amy in a room of maps.
This planet has so many people on it.
She said without looking up. Amy leaned over a massive map of the planet. Pinned on every wall were charts of country borders and city streets. She was totally absorbed.
Planning a trip?
Sonic asked and forced a flat chuckle.
The trip is over. All that's left now is to...
Amy sneezed, covering her mouth with her hand, but Sonic noticed that her hands were now covered in green slime.
Gross!
Said Sonic. Amy just looked at him with an empty stare. She slowly reached out her slime-covered hand.
It's fine. Touch it and you'll see.
In a blur, Sonic was gone again, roaming the streets for answers to whatever happened to his friends. No matter how fast he ran, no answers came. Then it hit him. The slime! The crash site must hold the answers to what was happening. Within seconds, Sonic was back on the outskirts of town and rushing into the quiet glade. What met him there was another friend. Or was it? Big sat still as a stone in the blackened pit that the saucer had dug. It was clear the large purple cat was staring up at the dented meteorite that still glowed an eerie shade of green.
Hey, pal.
Sonic called, trying to act normal.
Fish ain't biting today?
Fish?
Big finally said.
No, we are busy.
He rose slowly like a sleeping giant and lurched around. His eyes had turned a bright green, and streams of green goo dripped down them into his whiskers.
You understand us.
Said the cat slowly.
All you have to do is submit.
They couldn't be talked to, they couldn't be fought, and they most definitely couldn't be touched. Sonic sprinted in a panic, thinking how he might save his pals.
Tails!
Sonic burst into his friend's lab.
We need to do something! That space probe has infected Amy, Big, Cream, and Cheese with some kind of virus!
But that's not possible.
Said Tails.
The medical team checked the entire site. There was no organic matter in that robot. Even that green slime was just some kind of insulation.
I don't care what you call it! It did a number on our friends! And now they're acting like some kind of creepy crawlies!
Said Sonic. He paced around the room.
What can we do?
Well, I am running some tests on this silver meteorite.
Tails said as he pulled back a shelf to reveal a 2-inch chip of the rock. Sonic stopped dead in his tracks when he saw the green glare of the fragment.
Tails, you didn't touch it, did you?
Of course not.
Said the fox.
There's still a chance a metal like this could be highly vulnerable. So I took every precaution extracting it from the crash.
Well, we gotta figure out what it is. And fast!
Said Sonic. He looked out at the streets from the window. In the distance he thought he could see Cream slowly trudging along with a massive metal spike slung over her shoulder.
That's easier said than done.
Said Tails.
I'm good, but I'm no expert in cosmic metallurgy. I'm afraid we're just gonna have to wait until I can run every test I know.
But in the street, people were starting to scream. Cream began using her flying ability with her ears to spread slime all over the town. People were getting infected by the green slime and slowly turning into a diseased mob, wandering around in slow motion as Tails and Sonic watched in horror.
Tails, if there's one thing I'm bad at, it's waiting.
The evening became a nightmare in slow motion. Sonic left Tails locked up in the lab and hit the town at top speed, warning anyone and everyone to avoid the sick. But no matter how fast Sonic ran, he was always too late. The people of the city were shambling through the streets. Their heads hung low, and their eyes glowed with sticky green slime. Yet despite their lethargic motions, everyone's strength seemed to have increased tenfold. They tore up street lamps and stop signs and mailboxes. Anything metal was ripped up, crunched together, and carried away by the groaning masses.
Submit. Submit. Submit.
They droned on as each new piece of steel was dragged away.
Submit.
They're building something!
Sonic said as he zipped along the alleys of the city undetected. Suddenly, a city bus landed in the street ahead of Sonic with an epic boom. He skidded hard to avoid hitting it. When Sonic looked up, he saw Big lumbering toward him.
Why does it run from us?
Big said.
We will not hurt it.
Sonic spun to run the other way only to see Cream and Cheese approaching from across the street.
Yeah.
Said Cheese in a hollow voice. Sonic backed up against the wall of a building, only to see Amy slinking along the curb toward him. Her face was an eerie green mask.
Why can't it realize that it must submit
She said, raising a hand.
or be destroyed?
Sonic sprinted through a small opening between the two of them, and as he raced away, he looked back at an army of droning people with glowing green eyes.
They're right behind me, Tails!
Said Sonic as he slid into the lab. The Fox pulled an emergency lever. The windows and doors of the lab were soon covered by metal doors 4 feet thick.
I built this in case Eggman ever attacked, but it should hold them back for now.
He said.
But what are we gonna do about them? They're everywhere.
Tails sat at his workshop bench and rubbed his eyes.
I have an idea.
He said as a schematic of the saucer machine lit up on a screen behind him.
The green meteorite is more than a mere power source. It has a mind of its own.
Outside, the army of the infected had reached Tails' lab and began scratching at the metal walls.
So it's some kind of alien invader?
Asked Sonic as the sound grew louder.
Not exactly. This thing isn't living or dead.
Tails said in awe.
It's more like a computer than anything else, sailing through space on a makeshift craft for thousands of years. It's like a spear thrown into the sky that never came down. A spear with a simple, primitive program driving it to take over all it comes into contact with.
So if it's not alive or dead, how do we stop it?
Sonic said as the scritch seemed to crawl up his spine.
I built this amplifier.
Tails said, holding a large circuit board brimming with wires.
It's attuned into the meteorite's unique frequency. I use it to speak into the fragment.
And?
Sonic clenched his teeth.
It's amazing, really.
Said Tails as he stared at the green fragment encased in a glass container.
Just imagine traveling in the cold of space for millennia. It's slower than us, but it's so much more patient. You can't even begin to understand what it can do. How it can communicate through touch and transmission and even by sight. And once we amplify it fully, everyone will understand.
Scritch. Tails began rubbing his nails against the glass slowly.
Buddy, what are you talking about?
Sonic said as he reeled back in horror. Sonic turned to his friend as 2 thin green tears ran down his face.
Don't fight us anymore, Sonic.
He said.
We waited this long. We will take you eventually. And it's so much nicer once you submit.
With a slow squeeze, the Fox shattered the glass container, grasped the meteorite fragment in his hand, and slammed down hard on the security switch. In an agonizing instant, endless streams of green arms snatched their way into the raising doors and lunged at Sonic. Sonic swooped through the lab and stole away Tails' amplifier device. Within seconds, he slipped through a rare unclogged window and sprinted for the hills.
They need this thing to complete whatever they have planned,
said Sonic as he ran into the night.
But what can I do that doesn't just slow them down?
Fortunately for Sonic, Tails had prepared a memo that he now noticed was attached to the amplifier, telling him exactly what he needed to do. In the black of midnight, Amy, Tails, and the rest of the infected wandered their way to the crash site and handed their metal over to Big. Twice as strong as the others, he molded their collection around the meteorite's spire to create one massive broadcast tower.
We have found the path.
Big said in a robotic voice.
We'll send a signal home and call the Great Meteor here.
Said Cream, staring up at the tower.
And soon the entire planet will submit to us.
Said Amy.
Or be destroyed?
Called Sonic. He stood on a branch high above the crowd with the amplifier in his hands, and they turned their heads slowly in unison to look at him.
Do you understand us now?
Called Tails.
That we can wait forever to win?
I've accepted the reality,
Said Sonic.
so I figured I might as well speed things up.
He leaped from the tree, holding Tails' amplifier above his head, and landed in the green crowd. Their hands were all over him as they passed Sonic across the glade. Each new touch rubbed him in slime, and he soon started to hear a voice in his head.
Submit.
It whispered. By the time Sonic had passed to the metal tower, his eyes were bleary with the green light. Its power coated his brain, overriding any impulse that was his own. It would be easy to give in, but his mind raced with a plan.
This
Sonic said slowly, handing forward the device.
will spread our message across the stars.
Big the Cat lifted Sonic up, and the Hedgehog pressed the amplifier onto the tower just above the glowing green meteorite. The crowd swayed in excitement. Sonic felt as if his brain was drowning. Did he really want to do this? Did he want to submit to the power of the unliving rock? His hands attached the wires of Tails' creation to the tower slowly. His fingers ran over its dials, sticking on the buttons. Finally, it was ready.
I'm sorry,
said Sonic as he flipped a switch on. Then his vision erupted in fire. The world came into focus as the light of day stung Sonic's eyes. He was in a hospital bed, surrounded by...
Tails! Amy! Big!
Sonic cried as he kicked off the covers.
It's okay, Sonic.
Said Amy.
We're cured.
He relaxed and sunk into the bed.
So it worked?
I'm glad that you found my memo,
said Tails.
Overloading the amplifier created a wicked feedback loop. The meteorite's power was never meant to pump out that much info that quickly.
Gotta move fast.
Sonic laughed to himself.
But was anyone hurt?
Just you, pal,
said Tails.
When the machine overloaded, it sparked and caught fire in your hands. Luckily, the feedback was enough to burn the program out of everyone's system and melt down the tower.
Sonic looked down at his hands. They were fully wrapped in clean white gauze and throbbing in pain.
Will I be okay?
He asked.
You will make a full recovery,
said Big.
All it will take is time and patience.
Ugh,
said Sonic.
If there's one thing I'm bad at, it's waiting!
You hear the screeching of an owl, you hear the wind begin to howl. You know there's zombies on the prowl, and it's terror time again. They've got you running through the night. It's terror time again, and you just might die of fright. It's a terrifying time. You hear the beating of your heart, you know the screaming's gonna start. Here comes the really scary part, 'cause it's terror time again. They've got you running through the night. It's terror time again. Oh, you just might die of fright. It's a terrifying time. All the trees begin to moan, and the monsters grunt and groan, rotting faces full of slime. Don't you know it's terror time?